Hello, chefs. Today we talk control versus creativity and why structure creates freedom. I am Mark Grigsby, your chef and guide through this experience, and this is the incredible Discourse.
All systems go.
Welcome to episode 3 of the Incredible Discourse. I hope you guys are ready for a good one today. Today, we're talking about control and creativity. But before we get into the thing that we do, if you haven't already, or if this is your first time, tap the like and subscribe button. It helps us deliver the best culinary content the internet has to offer on time to you and helps us spread the word about the show and all that we have to offer. So, we're going to jump into it quickly today. So, let's get into it. Control versus creativity. Today, we're unpacking one of the biggest misconceptions in cooking, that creativity somehow comes from chaos, that the great dishes and the iconic plates, the memorable moments in the kitchen are born out of loose decisions and last-second ideas. But if you spent even one real night on a hotline, you know that's not how it works. Chaos doesn't create creativity. Chaos kills it. Chaos makes you sloppy. Chaos forces you to compensate instead of compose. And the cooks who look the loosest on the line, they're usually the ones who prep the hardest. Control, your systems, your habits, your mise en place. That's what actually creates the freedom to improvise, to explore flavor, to build something that feels effortless. For home cooks, this episode is going to help you stop gripping the recipe card like a lifeline and start trusting your instincts. For pros, it's a reminder that discipline is not limitation. Discipline is the runway for innovation. You earn the right to be creative by respecting the structure that supports the work. But before we can go deeper, let me tie this into everything we've been building this season. The modern chef isn't someone who relies on talent alone. The modern chef is someone who understands that if your systems are tight, your mind is free. If your prep is disciplined, your creativity can breathe. So, with that idea front and center, today's final intent is quite simple. The order you build is the creativity you unlock. Creativity gets romanticized a lot, especially on social media in this day and age, where everything looks like it just came together perfectly at the last second. But in real kitchens, both home and in restaurants, creativity doesn't show up because you decided to wing it. Creativity shows up because you built a foundation that allows it to show up without derailing everything else. And that brings us into the heart of the real conversation here, the relationship between structure and freedom. Because what I've learned in 19 plus years of doing this, from scrubbing dishes to running kitchens, is that the more structure you create for yourself, the more creativity you get back. So let's start by breaking down what we actually mean by control. A lot of people hear that word and immediately think, oh, so we're cooking like robots and that's bad. But no, control is not rigidity. Control is systems. Control is the backbone of execution. It's the organization you do before the heat hits the pan. It's the preparation. It's the discipline. It's the quiet work nobody applauds, but everyone tastes. Think about prep for a second. Not the glamorous part, not the fancy garnishes, not the plating details. I mean the foundational prep. Cutting, portioning, labeling, tasting, organizing, cleaning, planning, control lives in those steps. Control is what keeps your head clear during execution. And then on the other side of the coin is creativity. but not the fluffy, throw some microgreens on it and it's creative. I'm talking about real creativity. Improvisation rooted in skill, intuition, and experience. Creativity becomes possible when you've internalized enough of the process that you can focus on the details that actually matter. Flavor, texture, timing, balance. That's the kind of creativity we're talking about today. And here's the truth. I want you to kind of hold on to this a little bit. Structure reduces cognitive load, that mental weight you carry when you're juggling too many things at the same time. Every time you make a decision in the kitchen, your brain spends a little bit of that energy. Where's my knife? Or did I season that already? Or is that pot about to boil over? Or what pan should I use for this? These small hesitations pile up. They slow you down, make you second guess, and steal the brain power you actually need to cook well. When your systems are tight, your brain gets to actually stay focused on the higher level decisions, the decisions that make food great. So let me show you how that plays out with an example everyone understands. Mise en place. Chefs harp on mise en place like it's tattooed into our DNA. And honestly, in most good kitchens, it might as well be. But mise en place isn't just cut the vegetables ahead of time. Mise en place is a mindset. It's a whole philosophy about how to prepare yourself to execute at your highest level. When everything is cut, labeled, within reach, portioned, and organized, you remove 90% of the friction that usually keeps people from cooking well. Suddenly, you're not thinking about what you forgot. You're not running across the kitchen like an asshole for something. You're not scrambling around. Your mind is open. And that's where the creativity lives. The science backs this up. Psychologists call it cognitive offloading. When you build systems, you free your brain to do more interesting work. And that applies to whether you're a surgeon or a pilot or a saute cook on a Friday night. Chefs don't obsess over order because we're neat freaks. Okay, that might be a little bit of it, right? But we obsess because order buys us freedom. Let's zoom out for a second and look at culinary history. Because this isn't just theory. This is literally how cuisine evolved. Take Nouvelle, for example. In the 1960s and 70s, chefs like Paul Bocuse didn't just wake up one day and say, well, let's make food lighter and more expensive. No, they had decades of classical training behind them. They understood traditional techniques immediately. That discipline, the rigor of Escoffier era, that gave them the confidence and clarity to break away from it. They knew the rules so well that they could reshape them. Now, fast forward to modernist cuisine, guys like Grant Atkins and Heston Blumenthal. They weren't cowboys throwing powders into blenders just to see what happened. They were scientists, methodical, exacting. They created systems so precise that creativity became almost mathematical. They weren't removing structure from cooking. They were adding more of it. Innovation in cooking doesn't come from chaos. It comes from chefs who are so disciplined, so technically sharp, and so prepared that they can safely explore the edges. Now, let's bring this back to the ground level, to where the real world is. Because the principles don't just apply to culinary legends, they apply to every cook in every kitchen. So picture this. A line cook at 6:45 p.m. on a Saturday night. Tickets are printing nonstop. The printer sounds like a fucking broken chainsaw. The fry station is smoking because somebody dropped the basket too hard. The expo is calling for 2 remakes and a swap. This is the moment where creativity and panic look very similar, unless you're prepared. A cook with flawless mise en place, with every container topped off and every tool exactly where it needs to be, has options. They can pivot. They can improvise. They can take a ticket with a modification and adjust it on the fly. Their hands move automatically. Their brain is free to think strategically. Fire this, hold that, drop that, replate this. Now, a cook with bad systems, they drown. They blame the station. They blame the menu. They blame other people. But the truth is very simple. The chaos they experience is a reflection of their preparation. Home cooks deal with this too. They just experience it a little differently. Think about how many times you've cooked dinner and found yourself scrambling, chopping garlic while the onions are already fucking burning, realizing you're missing an ingredient halfway through and hunting for a pan with something already in your hands. That scramble doesn't just ruin the moment. It destroys your confidence. And when you don't feel confident, you don't feel creative. But imagine the opposite scenario. Your ingredients are chopped, your spices are portioned, you've read the recipe start to finish, your pans are chosen, your counters are clear. Suddenly, you can riff, right? You're ready to ball. You can swap basil for parsley. You can add lemon at the end for brightness. You can adjust the heat instead of rushing. You're not cooking from fear. You're cooking from clarity. That's why I always say, structure isn't rigidity. It's the safety net. Without that net, creativity feels risky. With it, creativity feels natural. So let's explore the mechanics behind this so that it's not just a philosophy, it's practical. When you build systems in the kitchen, whether you're cooking at home or you're on the line, you reduce the number of micro decisions you have to make. These micro decisions are the ones that exhaust your brain and limit how much bandwidth you have left for flavor, texture, timing, technique. So, for example, if your knives are always in the same place, you don't waste seconds searching. If your spices are organized, you don't hesitate when seasoning. If your prep is portioned, you're not guessing quantities mid-cook. If your pans are pre-selected, you're not making decisions under heat. And each of those systems buys you back a little bit of mental clarity. And clarity is the birthplace of creativity. And there's also an emotional component to this that we don't talk about enough in the industry. Structure builds confidence, and confidence reduces anxiety. And anxiety is one of the biggest killers of creativity in any kitchen. When you're stressed, the only thing your brain cares about is avoiding disaster. When you're calm and prepared, your brain starts playing, tasting, testing, exploring, adjusting. Think of creativity as a muscle. It doesn't activate when you're panicked. It activates when you're secure. And this is why the cooks who look the most creative are almost always the most organized. They're not stressing over crumbs. They're not scrambling for ingredients. Their minds are clear. They have time to taste their food. They have the bandwidth to think, well, what if I did add a splash of vinegar? What if I did toast these spices first? What if I reduce this sauce a little longer? Structure creates stillness. Stillness creates space. Space creates ideas. Now, I want to take you into a moment early into my career because I learned this lesson the hard way. There was a night where I let my ego get ahead of my experience. And I decided I was ready to create a special on the fly. No written notes, no scaled recipe, no tasting plan, just vibes. Just that naive confidence young cooks get before reality humbles them. And at first, I thought I was pulling it off. Everything looked good on the cutting board. The colors were right, The components sounded clever, but service started, and within minutes, the entire thing unraveled. I didn't make enough sauce. The garnish wasn't portioned. The timing was off. My station looked like it had legitimately been robbed. My chef watched me implode for a few minutes and then finally pulled me aside. And he didn't yell at me. He didn't embarrass me. He just gave me a line I never ever forgot. He said, "Improvisation isn't creativity. It's panic if you're unprepared." And in the moment, I realized the truth. I wasn't being creative. I was scrambling. I was compensating. I wasn't cooking. I was trying to save myself from mistakes I made hours earlier. Chaos kills creativity, and discipline protects it. That was the lesson. And it changed everything about the way I approached my cooking. Now I want to shift this conversation towards home cooks, because this idea of structure unlocking creativity isn't exclusive to professional kitchens. In fact, if we're being honest, home kitchens need structure even more than restaurant kitchens do. Because in a home kitchen, you don't have a team. You don't have a dishwasher feeding you clean pans. You don't have backups or a sous chef or a walk-in full of backup mise. You've got one shot to get it right. And most of the time, you're cooking after work when you're tired and hungry and just trying to get something on the fucking table. So, home cooks, let's break this down and make it practical. You know what time it is.
Food for thought.
The home cook's biggest enemy is overwhelm. It's not talent. It's not lack of creativity. It's overwhelm. The feeling of trying to chop, stir, measure, read, think, and pray nothing burns at the same time. And the beautiful part? Overwhelm disappears the moment structure enters the picture. So let's talk habits, real everyday habits. Habits that build confidence in the same way repetition builds confidence in a restaurant. The first one is simple but transformative. Do your mise en place before you turn the heat on your stove. And I mean all of it. Chop your aromatics, portion your spices, measure your liquids, set out your tools. Don't turn the stove on until you're ready to cook with clarity. Because the stove is not your warm-up. The stove is go time. When heat hits the pan, timing becomes real, and timing is always unforgiving. The number one mistake home cooks make is turning the heat on too early. It creates urgency where there doesn't need to be any. But when everything is prepped beforehand, cooking becomes a flow instead of a scramble. You move with intention, not reaction. The second habit, clear your counters. It sounds tiny, but it matters. Space creates clarity. Clutter creates confusion. When your counters are full of mail, half-empty spice jars, and yesterday's cutting board, your brain is already at a disadvantage. Clean surfaces are clean thinking. And clean thinking makes cooking smoother. The third habit is build simple prep rituals. And they don't have to be fancy, just consistent. Maybe it's always chopping your aromatics first. Maybe it's pulling out every bowl you'll need. Maybe it's keeping a trash bowl on your cutting board. Small rituals give you a rhythm, and rhythm gives you confidence. The fourth habit is something I teach everyone. Keep a flavor board. Think of it as a small area with the things that brighten and balance dishes instantly. Lemon, vinegar, olive oil, herbs, finishing salts. When these tools are at the ready, creativity becomes easy because adjusting flavor stops being a chore and becomes instinct. Now, let's talk about common mistakes. The traps home cooks fall into, not because they're inexperienced, but because the environment they're cooking in sets them up to struggle. The first mistake, rushing into cooking without prep. We just talked about this, right? This is the fastest way to feel overwhelmed. Cooking and prepping at the same time is like trying to plate while reading the recipe. It doesn't work. The second mistake is not reading the recipe fully before starting. And this happens very often, very common. Every recipe has a rhythm. And if you don't know the rhythm, you end up dancing to the wrong beat. The third is cluttered counters. We just talked about this again. A messy environment creates a messy mind. I can't overemphasize this. You can't cook clean if you're cooking in chaos. And the fourth, overthinking creativity too early. Home cooks often want to be creative before they master the repetition. And repetition builds intuition. Intuition builds creativity. And now it's time to lock this in. So here's your quick fix of the week.
Pro tips from the chef's list.
Home cooks lose the pan because they measure while they're sauteing. They're trying to follow the recipe step by step in real time. Meanwhile, the pan is getting hotter. The garlic is burning. The onions are sweating too fast, and everything starts falling apart. This happens because too many tasks are happening at the same time. Your brain can't chop, measure, stir, and monitor heat all at once. The solution is simple and powerful. Prep it all cold, cook it all hot. In your cold kitchen, measure, chop, portion, taste, plan. In your hot kitchen, execute. No measuring once the pan is on the heat. No scrambling. No hoping you're going to keep up. And here's a mini take for that. Consistency creates intuition. We just said that, right? And intuition creates creativity, right? We just went through that line. So when you stop surviving the cook and start commanding it, your creativity shows up naturally. And while all of that transforms the way you cook at home, in a professional kitchen, this mindset goes to a whole different level. Because at home, structure is helpful. It keeps the frustration down, keeps the confidence high, keeps dinner on track, right? But in a restaurant, structure is survival. It's the only thing standing between you and a rail full of tickets that are not going to stop printing just because you're not ready for them, right? In the pro world, structure isn't a nice to have. It's the backbone. It's the oxygen. It's the one thing that keeps the whole machine from falling apart the second stress enters the room. When you first walk onto the line, you learn very quickly that mise en place is not just a prep step. It becomes part of your identity as a cook. It becomes muscle memory. You start moving in ways you don't even consciously think about the way that you move, right? Your hand just knows where the spoons are without looking. You know exactly which pan you're reaching for based on weight alone. You can feel whether your towels are folded the correct way. You know the difference between a 6 pan and a 9th pan without looking at the label. And that's not magic. That's the result of repetition, discipline, and respect for the craft. And it's funny because from the outside, a busy line can look quite chaotic. People moving fast, pans clattering, flames shooting up, smoke swirling around the hood. But when you're actually in it and on the line, when you're one of the people contributing to that momentum, you know it's not chaos at all. It's a controlled environment. It's controlled movement. It's choreography. It's a dance. And the second somebody breaks the rhythm, everybody on the line feels it. Communication is the glue that holds all of this together. Behind, corner, hot pan, hands, walking in, firing on two, heard. You don't just say these things because you're trying to sound like a chef. You say them because the system depends on it. Communication isn't an option. It's a safety net. It's a timing tool. It's a unifier. When the communication is clean, service moves like you're taking a breath. But when communication breaks down, everything gets tight. Timing gets sloppy. Plates don't land together. Proteins die. Sauces break. Servers wait. Guests wait. Stress compounds. And the whole thing becomes harder than it really needs to be. And then there's timing, right? The quiet assassin of many young cooks. And timing is everything on the line. A good cook understands time like a musician understands tempo. They know exactly how long it takes for a pan to heat up based on the sound of the oil. They know how long it takes for vegetables to go from raw to tender to mush. They know how long a steak should rest before slicing, even without a timer. They can feel when a sauce is ready because the viscosity changes under the spoon. Timing in a kitchen is not abstract. It's real. It's measurable. And it's the difference between being good and being great. And this is where structure unlocks creativity. Because when timing becomes predictable, when your station is tight, your tools are set, your sauces are prepped, and your garnishes are ready, you have room to think. You have room to taste. You have room to adjust. You have room to be creative in a way that doesn't compromise the dish. You're not rushing, you're refining. You're not scrambling, you're executing, and that's the difference. The pros know this. They know that freedom comes from discipline. They know that creativity isn't something you just squeeze into service. It's something you earn by respecting the process long before the doors open. And that's why in training, structure always comes first. No one starts with the fucking nightly special. You start with the prep list. You start with the station map. You start with the standardized recipes that have been refined and tested. You start by learning the system so you can contribute to it, not disrupt it and buck it up. And once you understand that structure is what holds the kitchen together, you start to see how every piece of preparation serves a bigger purpose. Take flavored oils, for example. We'll throw out an example here. Pros don't make rosemary oil because it looks cool on the plate. They make it because it adds depth and aroma instantly. They know that to get it right, you need to steep at the right temperature, filter it correctly, and store it properly. It's precise. It's intentional. Same thing with compound butters. Anchovy butter, citrus butter, black garlic butter. These aren't afterthoughts. These are tools. They're designed ahead of time so that during service, you can add layers of flavor with one swipe of a spoon. And stocks and reductions, those are the real foundation of flavor in a restaurant. Good stock isn't an accident. It's discipline in the pot. Roasting bones the right way, sweating aromatics without browning them, simmering at the right temperature, skimming impurities, reducing slowly. That's craft. That's care. And that's what gives you the ability to create sauces that have depth instead of just being wet. In the pro world, structure isn't something that gets in the way of flavor. It's the reason flavor exists. And ratios is where structure really pays off for pros. Because once you understand the baseline ratios behind dressings and sauces, you stop guessing and you start calibrating. And look, forget the old school glug, 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 glug method. A balanced vinaigrette isn't guesswork. It starts with a real foundation. 2 parts oil to 1 part acid. That's the modern baseline. It's bright, clean, and gives you room to adjust without the whole thing collapsing on you. Want something softer or rounder? You move towards a 3-to-1, a touch more of oil, a little more richness, something you'd put on roasted vegetables or a composed salad. Want something a little bit sharper? Something with attitude, maybe? Bring it down to 1-to-1, equal parts oil and acid. That's the ratio for slaws, marinades, bold herb dressings, and anything that needs a punch. And that's the beauty of ratios. Once you understand these three, 1-to-1, 2-to-1, and 3-to-1, you can almost build any dressing or pan sauce confidently. You're not hoping it tastes right. You're steering it intentionally. Structure gives you that freedom. And then there's waste control, one of the most misunderstood elements of professional creativity. People outside the industry often assume that chefs get creative because they have endless amounts of ingredients back there just waiting for you to make something special. But that's not how it works. Real creativity is born out of limitations. Chefs learn to use every part of an ingredient, not because they're fucking cheap, but because they're creative. Herb stems become oils, vegetable trim becomes stock, stale bread becomes texture, bones become broth, rendered fat becomes flavor. Waste isn't waste, it's opportunity. And the more you see opportunity in your ingredients, the more creative you ultimately become. If there's one universal truth about professional cooking, it's this. The tighter your station is, the freer your creativity becomes. A clean, organized, thoughtful station is a creative station. A fucked up and sloppy station is a chaotic station. And it doesn't matter how talented you are. You can't create confidently if you've lost your mind and your whole thing is a mess. But when your mise is tight, your tools are clean, your sauces are ready, your garnishes are prepped, and your containers are fucking labeled, that's when you can actually think. That's when creativity shows up. When your station is dialed in, your ideas flow. When it isn't, your brain goes into survival mode. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna panic and do all this craziness. So here's your pro tip of the week. You earn your improvisation in prep, not on the line. You don't get to skip steps and expect brilliance. You don't get to cut corners and expect consistency. You don't get to prep halfway and expect to cook at a high level. When your station is spotless, when every squeeze bottle is full, when your sauces are tightened up, when your herbs are fresh and portioned, when your towels are folded the way that you like them, that's when improvisation becomes clean, sharp, and effective. Prep is not the boring part. Prep is the enabling part. Prep is what gives you the confidence to adjust without fear. And here's your mindset takeaway. Mastery isn't knowing what to add. Mastery is knowing why you can add it and having the structure to land that move every single time consistently. You're not just guessing. You're not just hoping. You're making informed decisions based on clear thinking and solid preparation. That's real creativity. That's real cooking. Today's final thought leads us to this. Creativity isn't the spark. It's the reward. The spark is discipline. The spark is the work you do before the flame hits the pan. When your systems are tight and your prep is thoughtful, your mind is free to explore. It's free to play. It's free to create without fear of failure. And freedom doesn't come from being loose. It comes from being ready. The most creative cooks aren't the ones with the most tricks in the bag. They're the ones who are the most prepared. They're the cooks who show up every day with a station that is so dialed in, so clean, so organized, that creativity has no choice but to show up. And before we wrap, let me point you toward what's coming next. Because next time we're diving straight into something big, something foundational to every dish you've ever loved. The flavor equation. This is where we break down what makes food work on a technical level. Balance, acidity, texture, fat, aromatics, temperature, and how all of those pieces come together to create unforgettable flavor. This is where cooking stops being guesswork starts becoming intentional. If you've ever wondered why certain dishes make you pause and say, oh, goddamn, this episode is going to be for you. And as always, don't just listen, be part of the conversation. Share your thoughts, your stories, your kitchen wins, your kitchen disasters, all of it using the hashtag #TheIncredibleDiscourse on X. Make sure you're subscribed on Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, and now Apple Podcasts, because new episodes drop every other Monday at 10 a.m. Central Time. And finally, before you go, let's talk merch. The Incredible Discourse has officially partnered with Board Games Apparel for the first wave of our show merchandise, and it is live right now on the website. And these aren't designs that you throw away, right? They aren't quick prints. They're intentional, just like everything we do on the show. They're stylish, and they represent the heart of this show, the hard truths, the real talk, and the love for good food and good craft. So if you want to rep the brand, support my work, or just grab something that looks fucking good, head over to theincrediblediscourse.com and hit the shop tab. Every order helps us grow this community, improve our production, and keep bringing you the conversations you tune in for. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I am Mark Grigsby, and this has been another amazing episode of The Incredible Discourse. See you next time.